Can you tell us a little bit about some of the kind of debate going on about whether moral truths are factual truths? And I think this was something that um, is just really interesting that a lot of people don't get to hear about that kind of a debate, and maybe students today don't get to hear.
Yes, well, that's a large subject. The question is, what's the best way to attack it? I think maybe let's start here. The notion that morals are not knowable, that is, they're not objective, they're not something that really exists that reason has to discover or recognize, but that they are embellishments of our preferences, of our tastes, of our values, that the difference between right and wrong is really just is indistinguishable from your taste in ice cream. You know, you prefer Rocky Road to coffee ice cream, and for no reason except that it appeals to you more. And unfortunately, it's not uncommon in the intellectual life of the West today, not just on campuses, to assimilate morality to the question of taste that might drive your preference for ice cream. So you have your values, our, culture, America, whatever, has its values, but these values don't really have a chance to be true. They are simply projections of our passions, of our own, ungrounded tastes. And as such, all morals are relative. And you can draw two conclusions from that premise. One is, and this is the one that liberalism and universities used to draw, one is openness. That we should be open to every other person's truths. And that formulation is very popular these days. Your truth, my truth. There isn't a truth or the truth. It's just that everyone has his or her, or now I understand many other pronouns worth of truths. And if that's the case, then one possible consequence of that is we should listen to each other and sort of regard each other as equally prejudiced or equally creatures of our upbringing and our passions and our preferences. But that doesn't really follow logically. That's a sentimental conclusion. And the one that follows with less sentimentality, and that one begins to see more and more of, I think, in the 21st century, is that if your truths are no better than mine, then why not impose my truths on your truths? You can't tell me it's wrong to do that, since we've admitted there is no such thing as right and wrong outside of your own value structure, your own preferences. And so, if truth really is a means to power, why not use your truth, to, in a very illiberal way, to erase other people's truth, to dominate other people's truth? And I'm afraid that's where, the campus is these days. That's where cancel culture, in a way, comes from. That's where a lot of the illiberalism of modern political life comes from as well. If you really don't believe in truth, after all, what kind of a politics can you have? What kind of a morality can you have? It's not coincidence, I think, that there's a lot more shouting and shouting down in today's life than there used to be, at least in America. And it's no coincidence that our politics is so divided and bitter, because there's really very little hope of converting anyone. There's very little hope of persuading anyone if you start from the premise that that there is no truth to be persuaded to.
Yeah, it seems like the idea that, oh, we live in this relativistic world and people just believe whatever they want and it's okay. It seems like that. I almost feel like it sort of ended, at least in the last like maybe 6 to 10 years, maybe sometime under Obama, because I feel like that coexist phrase, things like that used to be so big. People were, even atheism used to be much more debated topic. There used to be these atheists who would say, oh, this is my view on science and reason and all of these things. And now it seems like the left has taken over so much that the religion of the left is basically their values, which are power, which is winning everything. And it's not really about this kind of vortex where everybody can think whatever they want. It's like kind of like you said, where if you don't agree with them, then they'll basically just silence you. So at this point, they have these values, but I guess they think they're true, or they think that that's the only acceptable truth, or the only acceptable way to view something is their view. How do they?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be when I was in college. This is many years ago, of course. But when I was in college, one of the most typical activities in the college year would be debates. All sorts of student societies would sponsor debates of various people. We had something. I helped him create something called the George Washington Society at Harvard many years ago, and we sponsored a series of debates. We brought Bill Buckley to campus to debate John Kenneth Galbraith. We brought him to campus to debate well-known law professors about censorship and various things, and believe it or not, students paid money to attend these public debates. I think we charged, $5, which is a lot of money back then, per seat, and thousands of students would come to sit and listen to a debate. And now on campuses, there are no debates, or there are very few debates. I mean, there's a debating society or a club maybe for students to debate, a topic per year. That goes on. But it's not, there aren't big, sizable public debates that everyone is talking about and everyone is interested in, because postmodernism doesn't favor debates. It's not inclined to react to differences in values by having people try to discuss them and discuss the facts connected to those values. Its position really is you risk offending people when you disagree and when you entertain contrary values. And why would you want to do that anyway, since there is no truth, And so it's a very different campus and very different campus life now than it used to be. And some of your listeners are probably thinking about sending their children off to campus to college, and so it's a much more fraught decision now than it was 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, and it's one that parents and potential students need to think through very carefully where they're going and what they're going to be studying and with whom. And that's very difficult. I mean, it's very difficult to know before you get there what the real character of a college is these days. The reputations of them are well behind the reality. And so you can't, Harvard is really not the same place, I would say, as it was in the 1970s. It's become a rather different sort of institution. And that's true of a lot of colleges.